Welcome to Plus Talk on Plus Life. My guest today is filmmaker Matt Nadel. He is in London promoting a fantastic project and film he has done called Cashing Out. Good to see you, Matt.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, for those who haven't seen Cashing Out yet, or they don't know what it's about, what's the story and why did you decide to tell it?
Cashing Out tells the story of a controversial industry that emerged in the early days of the AIDS epidemic, where people with AIDS could sell their life insurance policies to investors for quick cash. And when they died, the investors would make a profit. It's a very ghoulish sounding industry for people who are around at this time. It might bring back some unwelcome memories. And I think for a lot of people who were not around at the time, it's a sort of shock to hear that something like this existed.
When you first learned that, people were cashing in on AIDS deaths, what was your very first gut reaction?
My first reaction was certainly one of disgust, of trepidation, of this feeling of like, how could this be? Um, and as I went through the process of making this film, it's a reaction that became a lot more complicated, and a lot. My feeling is a lot more ambivalent now. I still feel disgust, but less directed toward this particular industry and more toward a broader system that necessitated a narrow solution like this.
How do you think stigma has played the role in this process? And do you still see it in its shadow today?
Yes, stigma plays a huge role here. I mean, this industry arose because of desperation. The fact that the institutions that we count on to care for us, especially in the context of emergency, failed in this moment, abandoned the community of HIV positive people because of stigma. That's what forced them to turn to these sort of do it yourself, partial market-based solutions because there was no other option. And although we have effective treatments now, thankfully, I see that stigma very much continuing. I mean, not only in the actions that our government is taking now that are targeting HIV treatment and prevention and research, but also in the reluctance of our community to have frank conversations about HIV risk now that it seems like, we can pop our pill in the morning, whether that be PrEP or HIV medication, and not have to think about it when, we all know that's far from the truth.
You uncovered a family connection in this whole thing. How did that hit you as a director, and how did that hit you as a person, and what was that family connection?
It hit me first as a person long before it hit me as a director. My introduction to this industry was my family connection. This is a spoiler, so if you haven't watched the film, this is the moment to, pause and open a new window and watch the film and come back. My dad was an investor in the viatical settlement industry early on. He bought the life insurance policies of 30 or 35 people who were dying of AIDS and made a profit when they died, and those profits helped to fund my childhood, which is especially ironic given the fact that I'm a gay man. When I discovered this, which I didn't discover it until 2020, in the early days of our most recent pandemic, I was totally caught off guard. I mean, my reaction as a person was like, how could this be? How could it be that like it is nothing sacred? Even a human life in its most vulnerable phase can be commodified. And, my reaction or interest as a filmmaker came from my need as a person for some answers about what this industry was and what it was doing for people or to people. And as I embarked on that process, my initial reaction of sort of disgust or trepidation became complicated when I started to learn about how many people had really benefited from this industry at this moment when
And
the
wanted
government
it,
had abandoned them.
and wanted it, that
Yes,
sought out this, yeah.
exactly. And just seeing how it was gay people, it was people with HIV and their loved ones who had innovated this financial transaction into existence out of desperation or need, and how they were using it to extend their lives and give themselves the dignity that society was otherwise denying them, and beautifully seek out joy. Go on vacations or buy that dream house or do whatever thing that they said, well, I'm not dead yet. I can still experience these wonderful parts of life. I don't need to resign myself to the grave. So, then things became a lot more complicated for me because I was like, well, who am I as this person years later to, look back and condemn and say that was bad when actually it was helping lots of people. And going through that process of trying to understand who were the various parties here, what did they feel, whom did this industry help, whom did it hurt, whom did it not quite reach, and what did they do, that my filmmaker brain started to activate. Because the documentaries I like most are the ones that explore genuine moral ambiguity, that like dig into some like messy nuance. And I just like found such a story right in front of me, and I was like, okay, it's time to start making a film, and maybe other people will find some meaning in this, just as I have.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, you're sharing this with a generation who didn't live through the crisis. So what do you hope that Gen Z walks away with?
I hope that young people walk away feeling a responsibility to become guardians of this history. I always say that the participants in my film, whose names are Scott, Sean, and Dee Dee, they're superstars. I always say that they deserve to retire, but they will only retire when they feel confident that there are young people carrying the torch. And I hope that there are young people who understand our role. We've benefited so immensely from the sacrifices that this generation made. The least we can do is give them the assurance that we will carry forth the memory of everything that they experienced and everything they did, and that we will work very hard such that that never happens again. And I think right now we're in a moment politically where the risk of that is as high as it has ever been. The government is totally walking away from public health. It is totally abandoning the queer community. And, that, means that there are people who are getting their medications through Ryan White or PEPFAR who will stop having access and who will become sicker and who also could experience mutations of the HIV virus such that it becomes treatment resistant. And then we are right back where we were before. The government isn't here. We have an untreatable illness, and people are going to need help. Enter private industry again. So, I say this at every screening of the film, whether you land on the sort of morally positive or morally negative side about this industry, I hope we can agree that it is better off in our past. And I implore Gen Z to get moving right now to stop the resurgence of an HIV/AIDS apocalypse.
So if audiences leave just remembering one thing from Cashing Out, what should it be?
I think I would like for audiences to remember that no human life can be boiled down to a dollar value. And unfortunately, we live in a society that will try to do that. And it's our responsibility to resist.
I love it. Well, if you want to see the full story, you want to see this Cashing Out that we're speaking about, it is now streaming at thenewyorker.com. So check it out. Matt, great chatting with you. Congratulations on the film. A really interesting subject. And I think you've achieved what you set out to do. It certainly starts conversations. And I think that's how we move forward and we keep advancing in the fight to end HIV and HIV stigma. So I appreciate you making the time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, that is going to do it for this episode of Plus Talk. What do you think? Leave a comment below, let us know. And remember, you can like, follow, and share across all the socials. We are at Plus Life Media. If you want to see this interview in its entirety, head over to our YouTube page, Plus Life Official, and you can always visit the website, pluslifemedia.com. Until next time, be nice to one another. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.